The phone rang at 12:03 a.m. At my age, phones that ring after midnight are never good. Death announcements, hospital emergencies, or robocalls trying to sell you extended warranties on cars you haven't owned in 10 years. I nearly let it go to voicemail, but some breathless instinct made me pick it up. Hello, static, then breathing, then mom. That word pierced through me like glass. My fingers tightened around the receiver and my knees buckled. I slid down onto the kitchen floor barefoot, the cool tiles biting into my skin. Emily? No answer. Just silence on the line and then click. I sat there for 10 minutes, the dial tone humming like a lullaby gone wrong. I stared at the phone, willing it to ring again. It didn't. 15 years, 15 birthdays missed, 15 Christmases where I set an extra place anyway, and now a midnight call. Just one word, Mom, and my entire being unraveled. I tried redialing, but it was a restricted number. No voicemail, no trace. Was it a prank? A cruel joke? But no. That voice. That specific lilt at the end, the way she used to say Mom when she was sleepy, when she needed something, or when she was scared, it was unmistakable. The years hadn't dulled that part of me. My body remembered. My bones remembered. I sat in the dark kitchen, hugging my knees, staring at the family photo we hadn't updated since 2009. Emily's face, 17 years old, braces just off chin, lifted with a streak of rebellion, smiled from that frame like she never left. But she did. It was June when she disappeared. We'd had a fight. A stupid one. Something about her moving out for college early, about her father and I being overbearing. She'd slammed the door and said she needed space to breathe. I never saw her again. The police said run away. My husband said she'll come back when she's hungry. I said, no, something's wrong. And something was. No activity on her bank card. Her phone was found in a ditch on Route 5. Her backpack turned up a week later in a second-hand store across the state. No blood. No body. Just a slow, suffocating absence that made everything echo louder in this house. Eventually, people stopped asking. Her friends moved on. My husband didn't. He blamed me for pushing her too hard, for yelling too much that day. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. But I never stopped believing she was alive somewhere. And now, after 15 years, one word. Mom. I stood shaky and went into the living room. Opened the drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside was the blue spiral notebook Emily used to write in, the one I'd hidden away after she vanished. I used to sleep with it on my chest like it could warm me, comfort me. I flipped through the pages, silly poems, half-written lyrics, drawings of stars and wolves and broken clocks. Her world before it splintered. I clutched it to my chest. It had to be her. I barely slept. Every creak in the house jolted me upright. I charged my phone, turned the ringer on high, set it beside my pillow. I Googled call tracing police protocol, even psychic investigators. I'd tried one in 2013. She'd said Emily was between worlds. I stopped after that. At sunrise, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the screen of my phone like it was holy. Still nothing. But then at 6:42 a.m., a notification blinked. Voicemail 1, new message. My hands trembled as I pressed play. Hi. I don't know if this is still your number. I don't even know if you're still alive. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't try to find me. Please just know The message ended abruptly. No name. But the voice was unmistakable. It was her. It wasn't wishful thinking. It wasn't grief hallucination. I know my child's voice. And she was crying. I didn't know whether to fall apart or spring into action. So I did what I always do when I don't know how to feel. I made more coffee and called Susan. Susan has been my friend for 30 years. She's the only person who never walked away, never stopped believing Emily might still be out there. She picked up on the second ring. You sound like you've seen a ghost, she said. Not seen, I whispered. Heard. I told her about the call, the message, the broken voice. Meredith, she breathed. You need to report this. Report what? That a ghost called me from a blocked number and apologized. No, she said. That your daughter is alive. You said you believed that for 15 years. Now prove it. Her voice anchored me. I scribbled down everything the time of the call, the exact words I remembered, every tremor in Emily's tone. I saved the voicemail and sent a copy to a backup cloud. Then I did what I hadn't done in over a decade. I called the police. Of course they were skeptical. Cold cases are tricky, and mine had long turned to ice. The officer was polite, but detached. Could be a hoax, he said. People impersonate victims all the time. I wanted to scream, but I just said, check the number, please. Just try. After that, I sat down on the couch, clutched Emily's journal, and stared out the window. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. What kind of mother was I now after all this time? What would I even say if I saw her again? What if she hated me? And more frightening than all of that, what if she was calling because she was in danger? What if she needed help? What if I was her only chance and I missed it? I didn't move from the couch for hours. I just waited. Because somehow I knew this wasn't over. Somewhere out there, my daughter, the girl I thought I'd lost forever, was reaching out. And I wasn't about to let her go again. The hours that followed that voicemail felt like a vacuum. Time didn't move forward, it twisted. Stalled. Every tick of the kitchen clock sounded like a taunt, reminding me of all the seconds I'd lost over the last 15 years. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I sat on the couch, my phone clutched in one hand and Emily's journal in the other, afraid to blink in case I missed the next sign. I kept replaying her voice in my head. I don't know if this is still your number. I don't even know if you're still alive. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't try to find me. Why would she say that? Don't try to find me. Was she scared? Was she hiding, or had she been hiding this whole time? A part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to call every shelter, hospital, and halfway house in the country. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed direction. The police hadn't called back. I told myself they were looking into it, but deep down I knew better. This case had been marked closed in everything but name years ago. Around noon, the silence broke. Susan rang my doorbell. I opened the door, and there she stood, wind-blown still, in her pajamas and holding a tray of lemon bars. I figured if we're waiting for ghosts to speak, we should have sugar, she said. I burst into tears. She pulled me into a hug, and I sank into her like a child. She didn't say anything. She never had to. That was Susan's gift, holding space, not answers. We sat at the kitchen table, silent at first. Then she asked, "Have you listened to it again?" I nodded. 27 times. Anything new? I hesitated. There's something in the background. A bell. Maybe wind chimes. Faint but steady. Susan raised an eyebrow. That's something? We played the message again, turning the volume as high as it would go. There it was, soft and haunting. Chime. 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 That's not a wind chime, she said. That's a bell tower. Maybe a church. I blinked. You think she's near one? I think it's a clue she didn't know she was leaving. Suddenly, I was wide awake. My maternal instincts had dulled over the years, but they hadn't died. That noise could be anything. It could be everything. I opened my laptop and started Googling towns with prominent bell towers. I filtered by state, then by women's shelters and halfway homes nearby. And I started writing a list. But as I typed, something else gnawed at me. Please don't try to find me. Why would my daughter, who vanished without a trace, who left a crater in my life, reach out after all these years only to tell me to stay away? Was she afraid of me? Did she believe I didn't look for her? Did she think I had forgotten? Her Susan noticed my silence. What, she doesn't want me to find her, I said flatly. She called, and then she begged me to let her go. Or Susan said gently, she's in danger. I looked at her. You think someone was with her? I think you know that already, she said, placing a hand on mine. I think you knew the moment you heard her voice. It was true. Emily had sounded rushed, frightened, like someone might hear her, like she had seconds to say the words she'd been holding in for years. I stood and paced the kitchen. I should have told the police more, I muttered. What more? There was something else. Years ago. Something I never mentioned. Susan waited. I took a deep breath and opened the drawer under the kitchen counter, the one with old takeout menus and dead pens. From the bottom, I pulled out an envelope. Faded. Creased at the edges. Unopened. This came 3 months after Emily disappeared. Susan's eyes widened. You never told me that? I didn't tell anyone. It didn't have a return address. No handwriting on the envelope. Just this inside. I handed her the note. It read in blocky typewriter font. Don't look for her. She's safe. Let it be. No signature, no postmark, nothing. I thought it was a hoax, I whispered. Or a threat. My husband told me to burn it. I couldn't. Susan's face was pale. This changes everything. I know. We sat in silence, the note between us like a relic. Suddenly it all lined up. The call. The voicemail. The bell in the background. The plea to stay away. And this anonymous message from the past. Emily was taken. Maybe not by force. Maybe not at first. But she was kept. And now, after all these years, she had slipped through long enough to make a call. She's running, I whispered. That's what this is. She escaped. Susan leaned forward. Then we find her before someone else does. I stared at her. You're with me? I asked. I've always been with you. The next hour was a whirlwind. We printed maps, cross-referenced shelter lists, called in favors. I even called my niece who worked in social services out of state. She promised to quietly look for anyone matching Emily's description. Still, the silence weighed on me. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Every second without a new message felt like another second Emily might disappear again. By evening, I was exhausted. I curled up on the couch and stared out the window. The moon had risen full and cold. I thought of Emily where she was sleeping, if she was warm, if she was scared. I thought about what I'd say if I saw her again. How do you talk to a daughter who lived a whole life without you, who might blame you for letting her go even if you never stopped grieving? I would start with this. I never stopped looking for you. Not one day. Not in my heart. Not in my dreams. And then I'd ask, who told you to hide from me? The last time I saw Emily, she was barefoot on the front porch. Her suitcase in one hand, her favorite hoodie draped over the other. She was 17, barely more than a girl, but with eyes that burned like someone 3 decades older. It was late afternoon, that kind of humid July air that sticks to your skin. The fight had started small, like always. Over something stupid, laundry, I think. Then it spiraled. Fast. You don't respect me? She shouted. I was standing by the sink trying to stay calm. I asked you to be home before midnight, Emily. That's not disrespect. That's parenting. She scoffed. You mean controlling? You and Dad act like I'm still 12. I turned to her. Because you act like it. You don't tell us where you are, you don't answer your phone. Maybe I don't want to be found. That stopped me. Her voice had lowered when she said it, almost like she regretted it the second it left her mouth. But I heard it. Clear as crystal. I remember I just stared at her, and then said the most foolish, hurtful thing I've ever said in my life. Then maybe you should go. I didn't mean it. God, I didn't mean it. But Emily stood there blinking back what I thought were angry tears. She turned, walked to her room, and started packing. I didn't stop her. My husband and I were both too proud, too tired from years of tension of being on different pages. She had grown more rebellious in the last year. Grades dropped. Friends changed. I kept blaming the crowd she was with. But the truth, she was hurting. And I missed it. Within 20 minutes, she was standing at the front door. "I'll be at Amber's. Don't bother calling." She didn't look at me when she said it, just walked off the porch down the path and into the street. That was the last time I saw her. I waited a few hours before calling Amber's mother. She hadn't seen Emily. Then I called her friends. No one had. By nightfall, I was panicking. By morning, I was at the police station filing a missing persons report. What followed was a blur. Interviews, posters, empty leads. A bus driver thought he saw her near the station. A cashier claimed she bought cigarettes and left with a man in a red truck. Nothing ever confirmed. And then silence. For 15 years. I had that memory buried for so long. Not because I wanted to forget, but because it was the most painful 5 minutes of my life. The look on her face when I told her to go, it haunted me. Still does. And now she was back. In voice, at least. I needed to find her. But I also needed to face the truth if Emily had been living under a different name, hiding in shelters or worse. Then she'd done it because she didn't feel safe. Maybe not just from whoever had taken her in. Maybe not just from the world. Maybe not even from me. I hadn't been a perfect mother. I thought I was doing the best I could. I worked full shifts at the hospital, tried to keep the house together, made dinner, paid bills. But in doing all that, I missed the signs. The ones that said my daughter was crumbling. Susan interrupted my thoughts with a soft voice. "You're thinking about that day?" I nodded. I was awful to her. "No," she said. "You were scared. She was slipping away and you didn't know how to hold on." I told her to go. Susan didn't argue. She just let me sit in that silence. Later that evening, I opened Emily's journal again. Near the back, I found something I'd missed. A note written in pink ink, shaky handwriting, as if she wrote it in bed late at night. "Sometimes I want to run so far even God couldn't find me. But maybe that's where I'd finally feel safe." I traced the words with my finger. Safe. That word meant something very different now. Was she safe now? Or had she only escaped one prison to fall into another? I picked up my phone and called the detective who'd worked our case all those years ago. To my surprise, his number still worked. He sounded older, slower. But when I explained who I was, he immediately remembered. Holloway. The nurse from Glendale. The missing daughter. "Yes." "You got something new?" "I got a voicemail." From her. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "You should come in." So I did. The next morning, I brought the voicemail, the typed letter, even Emily's journal. He listened carefully, asked questions, made notes. Then he said something that caught me off guard. This could have been a cult. I stared at him. "Excuse me." He leaned forward. "It's rare, but it happens. Vulnerable teenagers. Groups that pose as shelters or spiritual retreats. They isolate them, rename them. Sometimes they move them across state lines." My mouth went dry. Why would she call me now because she got out? He looked me dead in the eye. And if she did, they might be looking for her. The detective's words echoed through me like a ripple of cold water across warm skin. If she got out, they might be looking for her. I clutched my purse tighter in my lap. The faded manila envelope with the typewritten letter sat between us on the table. The detective, Lieutenant Brenner, now retired but consulting, wore a calm mask, but his fingers kept tapping the desk. "You said she used to write?" he asked, nodding toward Emily's journal. "She filled dozens of notebooks," I said. "This one's just what I saved. The others—" I stopped. They were too hard to look at. He opened the journal gently as if it were an artifact. This pink ink. The note about running so far even God couldn't find her. That's not the voice of a typical teenager. That's trauma. I flinched. "She was just moody," I said reflexively. He looked at me for a long moment. "Did you ever suspect anything at home?" I stiffened. Are you asking if my husband hurt her? I'm asking if there were signs you might have missed. Children don't vanish into thin air without a buildup. I wanted to scream at him, but a deeper, more painful part of me whispered, "You've asked yourself the same question for 15 years. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled a small key from my pocket, one that had been taped inside the back cover of the journal. I'd never noticed it until last night. What's this? Brenner asked. I don't know, I whispered, but I think I'm ready to find out. Back home, I stood in the hallway that led to Emily's old room. It hadn't changed much. Same white wooden door, same squeaky hinges. I hadn't had the heart to repurpose it, even though it had sat untouched for over a decade. Inside, everything felt frozen in time. Posters on the wall, a lava lamp, old high school medals hanging from the dresser mirror. A copy of the bell jar still lay half open on the desk, its pages yellowed. I knelt beside her bed where I remembered she used to tape things underneath drawings, love notes, candy wrappers. And then, I found it. A small black metal lockbox tucked deep behind a loose floorboard. My hands trembled as I fit the tiny key into the slot. It clicked. Inside were three things: a photograph Emily at about 13, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. He had dark hair, wore a necklace with a strange symbol, and his hand rested lightly on her shoulder. She wasn't smiling. A note in her handwriting: if anything ever happens to me, this man is why. He calls himself M. A torn pamphlet awakened to the eternal way, a sanctuary for the lost and gifted. There was an address printed faintly on the back. No website, no phone. My lungs stopped working. I brought the photo and note back to Brenner the next morning. His face changed instantly. I know this man, he said. We looked into him years ago. He runs multiple spiritual homes across state lines. Nothing stuck. No witnesses. No bodies. Emily knew him. She didn't just know him. Brenner said darkly. He owned her. The next hours unfolded like a crime movie. He made calls, checked with contacts, pulled up reports I never knew existed. Back in 2010, he said there were whispers. A girl disappeared from one of M's facilities in Oregon, another in Kansas. No official charges. Families were too ashamed or too scared to speak up. Do you think she was with him all this time? I'd bet my life on it. The thought made my blood run cold. 15 years under someone's control. 15 years wondering if I failed her, only to learn she was being erased while I went about my days. And then came the hardest realization. She might have called me not to be rescued, but to warn me, to protect me. That night, I sat alone in her room, held the photo in my hand, stared at that man's face, that cold, pale face, his eyes slightly dead behind the smile. I felt rage rise in me like I hadn't felt since the day we buried my mother. This man took my daughter. He stripped her name, her identity, her safety. And she still found a way to call me. She still remembered the sound of my voice. I didn't cry. I stood. And I called Susan. We're going on a trip, I said. Where to? I read her the faded address on the back of the pamphlet. There. She didn't hesitate. Packlight. Before I left, I sat on the edge of Emily's bed. The last thing I did was whisper aloud, I'm coming, sweetheart. No matter what it takes. And I meant it. It was 3:17 a.m. when I woke up with her voice in my head again. Mom. Just that one word, soft as breath, like she was right beside me. It echoed through the stillness of the motel room, curling into my ears like the whisper of a child trying not to wake anyone. I sat up, pulse thudding. The room was silent. Susan lay asleep in the other bed, her arm hanging off the side like a rag doll. Outside, the distant hum of highway trucks reminded me just how far we were from home, but I wasn't going back. Not yet. Not without her. I reached for my phone and played the voicemail again. Hi. I don't know if this is still your number. I don't even know if you're still alive. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't try to find me. Please just know every time I played it, I caught something new. This time, I heard the crack in her voice as she said the word alive. Like she'd questioned my existence the same way I questioned hers for years. We were ghosts in each other's lives, neither knowing if the other still breathed. And then once more that faint sound in the background. Chime. Pause. Chime. Just as Susan had said, it wasn't wind chimes. It was a bell. A rhythm too steady to be anything else. I searched Awaken to the Eternal Way again and came up dry. But the address led us to a small rural town that didn't even show up properly on GPS. A place tucked into the base of a wooded ridge where the trees hung low over the roads, like they were trying to protect something. Or hide it. We pulled into town around noon. Main Street had 2 diners, 1 gas station, and a post office smaller than my old laundry room. A church steeple loomed in the distance, stark and too clean against the rustic surroundings. Brenner had told us they changed names. Rebrand. Move on if people get too close. But if you smell control and secrecy, you're close. We parked beside a local antique store and walked into the only cafe in sight. It was nearly empty, 2 older men playing chess by the window, and a teenage waitress with a tired ponytail and too much eyeliner. Susan ordered coffee. I asked about the bell. Bell, she repeated. The one we heard, I said. Does it ring regularly, like every hour? She nodded slowly. That's from the compound on the hill. Used to be an old seminary. The, group bought it a few years back. Group? What group? Susan asked. The girl shrugged but didn't meet our eyes. They help people. Women mostly. Lost souls, they say. Keep to themselves. Real private. I leaned in. Do they let visitors in? She blinked. No one goes up there. Not unless you're invited. My stomach sank. Why? The girl hesitated. Then she said something I'd remember for the rest of my life, because sometimes people who go up there don't come back down. We drove past the edge of town where the road narrowed into cracked gravel winding up a slope flanked by tall trees. At the crest of the hill behind a wrought iron gate stood the compound. It looked nothing like the pamphlet. A weathered stone building with boarded windows, a bell tower rising from the center, and a silence that felt too deliberate. The sign read, "The House of Mercy." A new name, a new mask. We didn't get out of the car. I gripped the steering wheel. She's in there. I can feel it. Susan was quiet, then said, So what's the plan? We break in? I gave her a tired smile. You always make it sound so simple. She shrugged. I watched every episode of Cold Case. I'm ready. But we both knew we couldn't storm the gates of a place like this. It had to be careful. Quiet. A whisper, not a scream. So we parked at a nearby hiking trail and waited. At 4:15 p.m., a white van came down the gravel path and turned into town. Susan grabbed binoculars from the glove box, one of her many eccentricities, and we watched. Inside the van were 3 women, and in the back row by the window sat a woman with her face turned away. Her hair was tied back tightly. She wore gray like the others. Her posture was too straight, like it had been trained into her. I couldn't see her face, but I recognized the scar. A thin line on the side of her wrist, just above where the vein pulses. I knew that scar. Emily had fallen on a glass ornament when she was 8. Needed 6 stitches. I'd held her hand the whole way through, kissed her tears, promised she'd never see it again. But some things never really disappear. Susan and I didn't speak for a full minute. Then she whispered, You're sure? I nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. We followed the van at a distance into town. It pulled up behind the cafe. The women got out, slowly escorted by 2 men dressed in button-downs and pressed slacks. And then she turned. Just for a moment. Her face thinner, paler, older, but unmistakable. Emily, my girl. Our eyes met. Her breath caught. Her step faltered. And then she looked away so quickly it broke my heart. She didn't acknowledge me, didn't run, didn't smile. but I saw something in her eyes. Fear, recognition, and something else. Regret. The group moved inside. The door shut behind them, and I sat there in my car trembling, torn between the urge to run to her and the fear of pushing her deeper into hiding. "She saw you," Susan whispered. "She knows you're here." And I knew what I had to do next. Wait. Because if Emily had come this far to call me, she'd come farther still to reach me again. And this time, I'd be ready. I hadn't spoken to my ex-husband in almost 2 years, not since he remarried a woman named Tasha who wore perfect nails and didn't understand silence. But that night, after seeing Emily, truly seeing her, I picked up my phone and dialed his number. He answered on the third ring. Meredith. He sounded surprised, then wary. "It's her," I said without preamble. "She's alive." A pause. "What Emily?" "I saw her today, in a van with a group from that compound. It's her Richard. It's really her." Another pause. "Are you sure?" That question stung more than it should have. "Yes," I said, through gritted teeth. She looked right at me. He sighed, the sound grating. "Meredith, we've been through this before. You thought you saw her in a crowd 3 years ago. This wasn't a crowd. This was her. She has the scar." She looked right at me. He was quiet again. Then came that familiar tone, the cold rationalism he always used to shut things down. "If she didn't run to you, maybe she didn't want to be found." I closed my eyes. "You think she ran away from us? I think she ran away from you." The words landed like a slap. "She was 17. I said, my voice low. "She was a child." "And you pushed her," he snapped. "Don't forget Meredith. You were the last one who saw her." I stood up from the motel bed, pacing. My fingers tightened around the phone. "I didn't push her," I said quietly. "She was already falling, and we both missed it." A long silence followed. Finally, he spoke again, softer now. "Even if it is her, what do you plan to do? I don't know yet. But I'm not walking away." "You always needed to believe she'd come back," he said. "But sometimes people change so much they don't want to be found." "She called me," I said. "Last week. She left a voicemail." She sounded terrified. That wasn't someone who changed and moved on. That was someone trapped. Richard exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. "Then be careful." It wasn't encouragement, it was a warning. "Why?" "Because if she really was in something bad, those people don't like letting go." He hung up. Susan looked up from her laptop as I set the phone down. "Well, that went better than expected," she said, sarcasm so dry it could catch fire. I gave a bitter smile. He never believed she was coming back. Not really. Maybe it hurt too much to hope. Or maybe he just gave up. Susan didn't argue. I thought back to the years after Emily vanished. The therapists, the vigils, the nights Richard would leave the house and not come home until morning, reeking of whiskey and grief. How he'd started packing away her things without telling me. How I'd scream and unpack them again. We grieved differently, and it broke us. By the time the 3rd year passed, we were like roommates in a mausoleum, breathing in memories and calling it survival. The night he moved out, he said something I never forgot. "You keep looking in shadows for her, Meredith. But some shadows aren't hiding people. They're just empty." But he was wrong. Emily was never gone. She was buried under names that weren't hers, given rules that silenced her voice, held by people who twisted love into obedience. And now she'd escaped just long enough to whisper Mom. I wouldn't ignore that whisper. The next morning, we went back to the trail near the compound. From the edge of the woods, we had a partial view of the grounds. The bell rang at the top of the hour. Women moved in silent pairs through the garden paths. The air was too quiet. Like the world outside wasn't welcome here. Susan took photos through the binoculars. Not of Emily, she was nowhere in sight, but of the men, the layout, the patterns. We watched for 3 hours. At 1:10 p.m., something happened. A woman, tall, gaunt, with dark hair, walked alone toward the back building. Her posture was rigid, her eyes forward, like every movement had been drilled into her. She was escorted by a man in his 40s, clean-cut, expressionless. Susan whispered, "That's her. That's your girl." I could barely breathe. Emily's face was thinner than I remembered. Her cheekbones jutted out, her lips were pale. But her walk, the way her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeve that was still Emily. Then something remarkable happened. She paused. Just before entering the building, she looked over her shoulder. Not at anything in particular. Just looked. Like she knew we were watching. I blinked hard, trying not to cry. "She's not gone," I whispered. "She's still in there. Somewhere." Susan nodded. "She just doesn't know how to reach out again." "But I do," I said. That evening, I made the boldest decision of my life. I walked into the compound's front office and asked to speak with someone about volunteering. The receptionist was young, maybe early 20s, and wore a muted smile. "New to town?" she asked. Yes, I lied. "I'm a retired nurse. I've been looking for somewhere meaningful to offer my time." She tilted her head, curious. "And how did you hear about us?" I smiled, calm and practiced. "A young woman I met at a shelter. She spoke of this place with so much peace." A pause. Then she nodded slowly and handed me a pamphlet. "Applications are taken on Tuesdays," she said. "Bring ID." I thanked her and walked out. It was a risk. A big one. But I had to get closer. Closer than binoculars. Closer than waiting. Susan stared at me in the car. "Are you trying to get yourself inside?" "No," I said. "I'm trying to get Emily out. Because my husband may have stopped believing, but I never would." The private investigator arrived 2 days later. His name was Grant Avery, a wiry man in his 50s who wore mismatched socks and a face that looked like it had stopped smiling 20 years ago. Brenner had referred him, said if anyone could get eyes inside a place like the House of Mercy without raising alarms, it was Grant. We met in a roadside diner 30 minutes outside town. Neutral ground. He stirred his black coffee with a toothpick and listened without interruption as I told him everything: Emily's disappearance, the voicemail, the compound, the photo with M. When I finished, he sat back, exhaled, and said, "You're not crazy, but you're not safe either." I blinked. "What do you mean?" He glanced around the cafe, lowered his voice. "I've tracked places like this before. They go by different names. Mercy House, Wayward Light, Sanctuaries of Grace. Always somewhere remote. Always claiming to heal. What they really do is isolate, strip identity, rebrand souls." Susan leaned in. "Like cults." He nodded. "They don't like the word. But yeah." I showed him the pamphlet we found in Emily's lockbox. "Awaken to the Eternal Way." Grant squinted. "Old branding. I've seen that before. A place in Idaho. It disappeared overnight after a complaint went public. Girls went missing. One surfaced in Florida 6 years later. Different name, different hair, convinced her real mother was a liar sent by the devil." My stomach turned. "Was it her real mother?" I asked. He nodded. "DNA proved it. But the daughter couldn't accept it. She'd been broken too long." I closed my eyes. I couldn't let that happen to Emily. Grant pulled a small notebook from his coat pocket. "You said the voicemail came from a blocked number." I ran a trace. It wasn't easy, but there was a digital footprint, just a flash from a ping tower near Route 17. Same region as Mercy House. "So she called from there?" I asked. He nodded. "Most likely from inside the compound. Maybe a phone she snuck or borrowed. Maybe a moment alone." "She said not to find her," I whispered. "She said it because someone told her to," he said. "That's textbook control. Make them believe contact means danger. Then they silence themselves." I stared at the salt shaker. My reflection warped inside it. Grant leaned forward. You saw her. That's leverage. But you only get one shot. If they suspect you're trying to breach, they'll vanish again. Move to a new location. Burn the paper trail. Start fresh. Then what do? I asked. He slid a business card across the table. On the back was a number written in red ink. This is a contact of mine. Woman named Tia. Used to be in one of these places. She escaped 5 years ago. Knows their rhythms, their methods. She might help you build trust. Maybe even help you get a message inside? Susan looked skeptical. We're not exactly Jason Bourne here. You don't need to be, Grant said. You just need to be smart. And patient. I pocketed the card. What would you do if it were your daughter? Grant looked down at his coffee. She never came back, he said quietly. So now I help others bring theirs home. We met Tia in a small park just outside the city. She couldn't have been older than 30, but her eyes looked like they'd seen every kind of betrayal. She wore a hoodie despite the heat, her sleeves pulled tight over her wrists. She spoke carefully, like each word had to pass through barbed wire before escaping her mouth. I was 13 when they took me, she said. Said I was chosen. That I needed to shed my past. The first thing they did was give me a new name. Then they took my clothes. Then my voice. I sat very still. She continued. It starts like a retreat. Silence, reflection. They tell you your old life was poison. They isolate you. Assign you a guide. If you resist, they punish you through isolation chores, cold showers. If you cry, they say it's weakness being purged. I felt sick. Did they ever let you leave? Susan asked. Only in pairs, she said. Supervised. Like children. But worse because you believe they're saving you. I showed her Emily's photo, the one from the lockbox, the one with Tia sucked in her breath. That's Matthew. My heart stuttered. They called him a prophet. Said he'd lived 7 lives before this one. That he could see your soul's disease just by looking at you. Susan muttered under her breath. What a lunatic. Tia didn't laugh. He's dangerous, she said. Not just mentally. There were rumors. People who tried to leave, they'd disappear. Nobody ever asked. And Emily's with him now, I said. Tia looked at me. If she reached out, she wants help. But she's terrified. You can't just go in there and call her by her name. Then how do I reach her? She paused. You need to remind her of who she was. Before him. Before all of it. Like what memory? Smell. Sound. Something no one else knows. I thought for a moment. She used to hum to herself when she brushed her teeth. The same tune. Every day. Perfect, Tia said. Now write her a letter. Just a paragraph. Mention the humming. Sign it with a nickname you used to call her. I used to call her Bug, I whispered. Bug it is, Tia said. I'll make sure it gets inside. But once it does, be ready. For what? For her to reach back. Or shut you out forever. That night, I sat at the tiny desk in our motel room and wrote the hardest letter of my life. Dear Bug, you used to hum while brushing your teeth. Same silly little tune every morning. You thought I couldn't hear you through the door. But I did. And I smiled every time. I miss your laugh. I miss the way you'd throw your whole body into a hug. I love you. No matter what they told you. I love you. Always, Mom. I sealed the letter and gave it to Tia the next morning. She promised to deliver it using one of the contacts she still had inside the organization, someone who worked in laundry services and had access to residents' rooms. As she walked away, Susan put a hand on my shoulder. You sure you're ready for this? No, I said. But I've waited 15 years for a sign, and now I have one. And so we waited. For another knock, another whisper, another call. Because somewhere behind that iron gate and stone walls, my daughter now held my words in her hand, and with them, the key to remembering who she really was. 3 days passed. 3 days of watching the road to the compound, pretending to be hikers sipping coffee in silence, and listening to the same voicemail over and over until every breath Emily took felt like it lived inside my skin. I was beginning to wonder if the letter had been intercepted or worse, ignored. But on the fourth morning, we got the sign we'd been waiting for. It was subtle. Almost nothing at all. Susan and I were parked by the trailhead like we had been every morning, binoculars in hand, thermos between us, when the white van rolled down the gravel road toward the town. Same driver, same escort, same 3 women in the back. But this time, one of them was holding a folded napkin. A napkin with something drawn on it. Susan's breath caught. She passed me the binoculars. I zoomed in. My heart skipped. A small sketch. A crooked little beetle. Emily's sketch. The exact same style she used to doodle on the corners of her school notebooks. A bug. Bug. She got the letter. I almost opened the car door and ran after the van right then and there, but Susan's hand clamped down on my wrist. Not yet. But she's saying she hears you. That's all. She's not ready for more. So I sat, shaking, tears in my eyes, watching the van disappear down the road, holding on to the knowledge that for the first time in 15 years, Emily knew I was reaching for her. That night I couldn't sleep. The motel ceiling might as well have been the night sky. I stared at it for hours, wondering if she was doing the same. Lying awake, holding the letter, rereading it in secret the way she used to do with birthday cards. I wrote a second letter the next day. Tia picked it up in silence. Dear Bug, you used to leave me notes made of stick figure comics when I worked late shifts at the hospital. They always made me laugh even when my bones hurt. If you remember that, then I believe you remember me. I'm not here to take anything from you. Only to remind you you were always enough. You are enough. Love, Mom. The next day, another sign. This time, it was a leaf. Yes, a leaf pressed against the window of the van. A maple leaf painted pink with nail polish. Emily and I used to do that on weekends when she was little. Press leaves in old dictionaries, paint them, pretend we were making art from the earth. Susan leaned back in her seat and smiled. That's not just a sign. That's a memory. She remembers, I whispered. She's still in there. But we didn't know how much time we had, or how closely she was being watched. That evening we followed the van again into town. But this time, Emily didn't go inside the cafe with the others. She stayed in the van, alone. Susan and I hesitated. Then I made a choice. I got out of the car. Wait, Susan hissed. What are you doing? She's giving me a window. Or it's a trap. I don't care. I walked across the street, each step slow, deliberate, rehearsing what I'd say. My heart hammered against my ribs like it wanted to break free. As I neared the van, the side window rolled down. And there she was. So much older. Her face more hollow, her eyes deeper. But it was her. Emily, I breathed. She didn't speak. Just looked at me. Eyes glassy, jaw tense. I'm not here to hurt you, I said softly. Or drag you away. I just needed to see your face. To let you see mine. Still silence. I took a folded napkin from my pocket, the one I'd drawn our family dog on, just like I used to for her lunchbox. I passed it gently through the window. She didn't take it, but she didn't look away. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, My name is Anna now. A beat. Okay, I said. Anna. Another pause. They said you were gone, that you'd given up. I never stopped looking, I whispered. Emily Anna turned her face slightly, just enough to let her hair shield her expression. And then she said in a voice that was both hers and not hers, You shouldn't be here. If they see you, I'm not leaving until you ask me to, I said. Really ask me. Her lips parted, then trembled. Her eyes watered, but she blinked the tears away. Then the cafe door opened. 2 escorts stepped out. She panicked. "Go," she whispered urgently. "Please go." I stepped back just as one of the men spotted me. He narrowed his eyes. "Can I help you? I held up the napkin, returning something. He glared, walked toward me, but I'd already begun to walk away. Susan started the car. I got in, heart racing, Emily's face still imprinted in my mind. Susan didn't speak until we were back on the road. "Well?" She remembers I said. "And she's afraid." "What now?" I stared ahead. We wait, because even if she now called herself Anna, even if fear held her in that place, there was a war happening inside her. And part of her still knew her real name was Emily. I couldn't stop thinking about the way she looked at me, not with joy, not even with pain, but with hesitation, as if a part of her recognized me, and another part had been trained to flinch from the recognition. That night, I sat at the little table in the motel room staring at my hands, the same hands that had held her as a baby. The ones that had brushed her hair, tucked notes into her lunchbox, and once pointed toward the door when I said words I never meant. "Then maybe you should go." And now she was here just miles away. Alive. Breathing. Calling herself Anna. Trained to keep her voice low. To obey. To forget. But she hadn't forgotten everything. The napkin with the bug drawing the painted leaf, her glance in the van. They were like breadcrumbs from a buried mind. "I want to see her up close again," I said aloud to the air. Susan stirred in her bed. "You're not going back to the cafe alone? That was already too risky." "I'm not going there," I said, standing. "I'm going to the thrift shop." The thrift shop was a narrow building near the post office. The bell on the door jingled as I walked in. It smelled like old cotton and dust. A woman behind the counter looked up. "Help you with anything?" I smiled. "Just browsing. Looking for a gift." As I wandered, my fingers brushed faded cardigans and cracked vinyl records, and then I saw it. On a shelf of trinkets and forgotten toys sat a silver hairbrush. Not just any brush. Her brush. The one I gave her when she turned 14. Oval-shaped, engraved with tiny vines along the back. Her name, Emily, still barely visible through the scratches. My knees almost gave out. I picked it up, hands trembling. And then I heard it. A voice behind me. Quiet. Controlled. "Please don't do that here." I turned. It was her. Emily. Anna. She stood near the door, arms crossed, face half hidden by her hair. Her escort was outside talking to someone, distracted for now. I held the brush up. "It's yours." She didn't move. "I remember when I gave it to you," I said softly. "You were so annoyed I bought you something old-fashioned. But you used it every night." Still silence. "Do you remember that I asked?" She stepped forward. Slowly. Then she said almost inaudibly, "They told me you died." My heart stopped. "They said you were sick. That you couldn't handle losing me. That you let go." I shook my head. "No, sweet girl. I never let go. I fought. I screamed. I searched. I kept your room the same for 5 years. I wrote to you in notebooks I never sent." She blinked, lips parting. "They told me. You chose to stop looking." "They lied," I said. "Because if you believe the truth, you might have come back." Her hands trembled. One slipped from her sleeve. And that's when I saw it again. The scar. Thin. Faint. Running across her left wrist, just like the one from when she was 8. She'd fallen into a Christmas ornament, cried for hours. I'd cleaned the blood, held her tight, whispered that she'd always be safe. "You have the scar," I said. She looked down, slowly pulled her sleeve back up. "I remember that day," she whispered. I took a step forward. "Then remember me. I'm not Emily anymore." "Then what are you?" She opened her mouth, then hesitated. The door creaked. Her escort peeked in. She tensed. "I have to go, Emily." "Don't call me that. Not here. But that's who you are. She turned sharply. No, that's who I was. I swallowed my hurt. Do you want to be her again? Her eyes flickered. I don't know how. And then she was gone. Just like that. Back in the motel, I stared at the brush in my hand. Susan listened as I recounted everything. When I finished, she leaned back, arms crossed. She remembers, she said. She just doesn't know what to do with the memories. She said she doesn't know how to be Emily anymore. Susan met my gaze. Then show her. One step at a time. We sat in silence, the motel clock ticking loud in the stillness. And I thought, what if saving her wasn't about dragging her away? What if it was about reminding her, not just of who she was, but of who she could still become? Because sometimes survival isn't a clean escape. Sometimes it's a scar on your wrist you finally learn to stop hiding. The next morning, something changed. Not in the compound, not yet, but in Emily. The van came down the hill as usual. Same escorts, same gray uniforms. But this time, she wasn't tucked into a corner seat with her head down. She was sitting upright, looking out the window, watching. She was searching. I knew it the second our eyes met through the glass. There was no fear this time, no flinch, just recognition. And something behind it, readiness. After the van parked, Susan and I trailed it on foot from a safe distance. The group went into the back of the community thrift store, likely another errand run, part of the strict daily routine that allowed minimal outside contact. We waited across the street in a diner. 2 coffees, 2 sets of binoculars hidden in a grocery bag. I couldn't sit still. She's waking up, I said quietly. Susan nodded. Which means we need to move fast, before they pull her under again. That evening, I got a call from Tia. She didn't say hello, just whispered she's started writing. My hand gripped the phone tighter. What she asked for a journal, said she had dreams she needed to capture. They gave her a blank one, nothing lined, no binding. I know the staff member who slipped it to her. She said your daughter hasn't stopped scribbling since. I closed my eyes. Does she know it'll be read? Of course. Everything's read. But some things they won't understand. Like what symbols, drawings, codes. Emily's smart. If she's trying to get a message out, she'll find a way. I swallowed. Can you get it? Not yet. It's locked in her room. But I'll let you know the second something moves. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark motel window. The woman looking back at me had lines deeper than I remembered. Eyes sharper. Grief tempered into steel. She's writing, I said aloud. She's trying. Susan looked up from her laptop. Then we're past the waiting phase. What now? We build the net. Something she can fall into when she finally runs. The next 2 days were all action. We bought a burner phone, cheap, untraceable, preloaded it with photos of our old dog, of her childhood bedroom, of a note I wrote on a napkin that said, "You're not broken. You're just buried. I see you. Come home when you're ready." Mom, we packed a canvas bag with a few clothes in her size, a sweater from her old closet which I'd never washed because it still smelled faintly of her favorite vanilla lotion, a toothbrush, a necklace she used to wear, plastic blue shaped like a star. Then we left it where Tia told us to, just inside the delivery gate of the compound where laundry bins were collected. If Emily ever found the courage to flee, she'd have what she needed. Now all we could do was wait. The next night, the phone rang at 1:23 a.m. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered before the first ring even ended. Hello, static. Then a whisper. He knows. Emily, shh, she breathed. I don't have time. My heart pounded. They read the journal. They said it was blasphemy. He burned it. In front of everyone. I pressed the phone to my cheek. Are you okay, silence? Then I remembered your handwriting. How you draw hearts over the eyes. I put that in the corner of every page. I think they noticed. She exhaled shaky. I don't know who I am anymore. You're my daughter, I whispered. You're strong. And you are real. A pause. I think I'm ready, she said. Tears spilled down my face. Tell me where. But before she could answer, a door slammed in the background. Raised voices. Go, she hissed. They're coming. The line went dead. I stared at the phone like it might speak again. Like if I begged hard enough, it would rewind time. But it didn't. She was in danger now. Real danger. And she was asking to come home. At 6 a.m., I got another call. Tia. Emergency, she said. They moved her. My body went cold. Where they said she was showing signs of contamination. That she asked for outside clothes. That she quoted something about stars and eyes. They're transferring her to the satellite unit across state lines. I won't be able to reach her there. I couldn't speak. My mouth just opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Tia's voice hardened. You need to get her before they disappear her again. How there's a window. Tonight. I know the route. I know the stop they make to refuel. It's at a rural station 5 miles east of Deer's Ridge. If you're there at the right time, I will be, I said. Tell me what I need. That night the bag was packed. The burner phone was charged. Susan was behind the wheel and I was clenching a map so hard it crumpled like tissue. This was it. One chance. To catch a girl named Anna before she was erased completely. To bring my Emily home. Because the journal may have burned. But the truth inside her, it was catching fire. We parked at the gas station just before midnight. The sky was moonless, blank as ink. A soft fog hugged the road thick enough to smother headlights. The kind of night that swallowed sound. Susan turned off the ignition. The silence was heavy. You sure this is the spot, she asked. I nodded. Tia said the van always stops here on the way to the satellite location. Fuel, bathroom, roll call. And you're sure they'll stop? She was moved, I whispered. They don't transport people like cargo. They monitor them, control them. That means scheduled breaks. She'll be here. Susan glanced around. We've got maybe a 5-minute window. No more. I looked down at the burner phone. No new messages. The backup bag was in the trunk. Inside her sweater, water, protein bars, pepper spray cache. And the note I wrote an hour earlier. Emily, run now. This is your moment. We are right here. Just follow the road. We will find you. Love, Mom. I was shaking. Part terror, part adrenaline. Then the headlights appeared. The white van. Moving slowly through the mist just as Tia had predicted. It rolled into the station and parked at the farthest pump. 2 men got out. One stood by the driver's door. The other went inside to prepare. And in the back seat, I saw her. Emily. Her face pressed near the window. Eyes wide searching. She looked right at me. She saw me. I opened my door just a crack. I held up the burner phone screen glowing faintly. She recognized it. Her lips parted. A slow, tiny nod. Then she did the most unexpected thing. She opened the door from inside, quietly, swiftly, and ran. It happened in less than 6 seconds. She slipped out, sprinted across the dark pavement toward the back of the station, disappearing behind the dumpsters and into the trees. No one noticed at first. The man outside was facing the other way, smoking. The one inside was still at the counter. The engine was off. I jumped out of the car. Go. I shouted to Susan. Circle around, flash the lights if you see her. Susan didn't argue. She drove off fast, headlights off, looping around the back road that bordered the tree line. I ran. My lungs burned. My heart pounded in my ears. I ducked behind the dumpsters, whispering her name. Emily, Emily, Bug, it's me. A figure stepped out from the shadows, panting, pale, wild-eyed. It was her. She didn't speak. She just fell into my arms like a branch finally breaking. I held her, tighter than I ever had. I got you, I whispered into her hair. You're safe now. I got you. Then we heard the yelling. The man had discovered she was gone. A flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the trees. We ducked. Susan's car flashed its lights once, twice. That was our signal. We ran. Emily was barefoot. Her breath hitched with every step, but she didn't stop. I guided her toward the edge of the clearing, toward the road. Susan flung open the back door. We dove in. She hit the gas. The white van's driver burst from the building, shouting into a walkie. But we were already gone. Gone. We drove for 30 minutes in absolute silence, all of us too shaken to speak. Emily curled up in the back seat, knees to her chest, shaking. Finally, I turned around, reached out, touched her hand. Are you okay? Her eyes met mine, hollow but aware. I thought I'd never leave. You're out now, I whispered. You're safe. But her face didn't soften. Her shoulders didn't drop. Then she said it. He's not done. Who? She swallowed, looked out the window. Matthew, the man in the photo, I asked gently. She nodded. He's not who you think he is. Then tell me. She exhaled, closed her eyes. Her voice was hoarse when she spoke. I met him at a retreat center near the university. He ran workshops, breathwork, trauma healing. I was just trying to feel anything back then. After that fight with you, I wanted to vanish. My throat closed. I said nothing. He told me I had an old soul, that I was chosen, that the pain I carried was proof I was meant for more. I believed him. She looked down at her wrist. At first it was comforting. We had group meditations. We ate clean. They gave us new names to represent our rebirth. Anna. That was mine. She paused. But then came the rules. The silence. The confessions. We weren't allowed to write our own thoughts. We couldn't question him. If someone doubted, they vanished. We were told they ascended. But I knew better. Tears pooled in her eyes. He said my mother was dead, that she'd given up, that she threw me away. I reached for her hand. I never did. I whispered. Never. She choked on a sob. He took everything, Mom. My name, my memories, my voice. But you found it again, I said. You called me. You remembered. Her fingers tightened around mine. They'll come looking. Let them, I said. They'll never touch you again. She met my eyes. And for the first time in 15 years, she whispered, I want to come home. We drove through the night without speaking. Susan took the wheel in shifts. Emily slept in fits, curled under a blanket we'd packed, still trembling even when she didn't realize it. The girl in the back seat was not the child I remembered, nor the woman I had imagined she would become. She was something in between, a ghost slowly stepping back into her skin. We crossed the state line just after sunrise. The first light hit her face through the window, and I turned to look back at her. She was awake, staring at the sky. You always loved mornings, I said quietly. Even when you were little. She didn't respond. Silence was her shield. I didn't push it. At 7:30, we checked into a roadside motel 2 towns away from the one we'd been using. Susan paid in cash. We used fake names. It felt ridiculous and dramatic, but necessary. If what Emily said about Matthew was true, if he really hunted down runaways, we couldn't take chances. Inside the room, she sat at the edge of the bed, not touching anything, hands folded in her lap, like she was still under surveillance. I sat across from her and waited. When she finally spoke, it was a whisper. Almost angry. Why did you let me leave? I flinched. She looked up at me, eyes red, voice trembling. That day on the porch. You said I should go. And I did. I walked right out that door and into a nightmare. Tears pricked at my eyes. I'd been waiting for this question for 15 years. I didn't mean it, I said. But you said it. I was afraid, I whispered. You were already pulling away. I didn't know how to stop you without pushing harder, and I failed. She stared at me. Do you know what it's like to scream for someone in your head for years, hoping they'll come, and they never do? I did come, I said. I just didn't know where you were. She blinked. But I was screaming. I know. And I hate myself for not hearing it louder. The silence between us stretched like wire. Then she said, "You didn't protect me?" My breath hitched. "I know," I said. "I've played that day in my head 1,000 times, wondering if I'd just followed you. Would it have made a difference?" Emily looked at the floor. "He told me you hated me. He lied. He said you thought I was too difficult. That you gave up." I leaned forward, my voice trembling. "You weren't difficult. You were hurting. And I didn't see it because I was too busy surviving myself." She glanced at me. "Surviving what?" I took a breath. "Your father and our marriage was falling apart. I worked long shifts trying to hold everything together. I thought if I just kept moving, things would get better. But I missed what mattered. I missed you." Her jaw tightened. "I used to cry in my room, sometimes so hard I'd choke on it." I closed my eyes. A wave of guilt surged through me. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I was supposed to be your safe place. And I wasn't." She sat still for a long time. Then she said softly, "There were good moments." I looked up. "You used to braid my hair for school, even when I didn't ask. You always hummed when you cooked." "I remember that." "I didn't think you'd remember anything good," I said, tears in my eyes. "I forgot for a while," she admitted. "But then I started dreaming. Not nightmares. Just us. Small things. Sunday pancakes. The way you said my name when you were worried." I smiled weakly. "You used to get annoyed. Because I thought I didn't need you." A long silence followed. Then she said, "But I did." I stood and crossed the room. Sat beside her. I didn't touch her. I just sat. After a moment she leaned into me. Just a little. Enough. And then, in a voice small and shivering, "I don't know how to be normal again." "You don't have to be," I whispered. "You just have to be here. With me. That's enough." She turned to me, eyes glossy. "You sure?" I smiled through tears. "You're my daughter. I'd wait another 15 years if it meant hearing your voice again." She rested her head on my shoulder. We sat that way until the sun climbed higher. Two women, broken in different ways, healing slowly, finding their way back to each other one word at a time. The next few days were slow. Not in time. Time marched forward just the same, but in movement, in trust, in breath. Emily knew my daughter had returned. But the girl who used to sneak into my bed during thunderstorms and belt out songs in the shower was not the woman beside me now. This Emily spoke in short sentences. She moved quietly, as if the floor might punish her for noise. She flinched at sudden sounds. She apologized before asking for anything, even water. It broke my heart. And it terrified me. On the second morning in the new motel, she stared at the mini fridge for a long time. "You can open it," I said gently. She didn't look at me. "What if it's not allowed?" I walked over, knelt beside her, and opened the fridge myself. Just soda-bottled water, a sad sandwich in plastic wrap. "No punishments here," I said softly. "Not for being hungry." She nodded but didn't reach for anything. Later that day, we watched television together for the first time in 15 years. She picked the station, an old cartoon rerun from her childhood. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. She didn't laugh, but I saw her mouth twitch once. Then again. Progress. Susan came by with groceries and clean clothes. She hugged Emily gently and said nothing more than, "We're so glad you're here." It was perfect. No questions. Just presence. Emily didn't speak much that day, but at night, just as I was turning off the lights, she said. Susan doesn't look at me like I'm broken. She doesn't see you that way, I said. Emily hesitated. Do you? I turned back to her, heart pounding. I see you, like I've never stopped. Another silence, but this time it felt softer. She crawled into the bed across from mine and whispered, I don't like being alone in the dark. You're not alone anymore. I left the bathroom light on. She slept through the night for the first time since we got her back. On day 3, she started drawing again. I had left a notepad on the table beside a fresh set of markers. Not as a request, just an offering. I didn't think she'd touch them. But when I came back from the motel front desk with extra towels, she was sitting at the table, marker in hand, sketching something with careful strokes. I didn't ask what it was. Later, when she went to the bathroom, I glanced at the paper. It was a drawing of 2 women sitting on a park bench. One had her arm around the other. It wasn't polished, but it was honest. When she returned, she saw me looking. I started to step away, embarrassed. But she said, It's us. I smiled. I figured. She didn't smile back, but she didn't hide the drawing either. That was something. That night, over takeout noodles, she spoke again. I used to imagine you showing up at the gate, she said. Every birthday. I put down my fork. I didn't know where you were, I said. They made you vanish so completely. She nodded. He told us we were invisible to the world, that we were chosen because no one else wanted us, that our families had failed us. Do you still believe that she looked down? Sometimes. My chest tightened. I don't blame you. She lifted her gaze. Do you blame me? No. Not even for leaving, no? I said again. You were a child. You were hurting. You needed something I didn't give you. But you're giving it now, she said almost inaudibly. I couldn't speak. I just reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. We tried walking outside the next day, a small trail behind the motel. Nothing fancy, but the wind was light and the sun was warm. Emily walked slowly, as if unsure of how to be in open space again. After 10 minutes, she sat on a bench and stared at the sky. This feels unreal, she said. I know. I forgot what air smelled like when it wasn't filtered through recycled vents. I sat beside her. You can breathe now. Really breathe. She looked at me. Do you think I'll ever be normal? I shook my head. I don't think you need to be. She looked away. Do you think I can be? Me. That question hung in the air like a tender wound. I answered carefully. I think you already are. You just don't remember all the pieces yet. She was quiet a long time. Then I don't want to be Anna anymore. Okay. I want to be Emily. Again. But slowly. My throat tightened. As slowly as you need. That night she let me braid her hair. We didn't talk. She just sat on the edge of the bed and I gently parted her long, tangled strands. The same hands that once held her as a baby now touched her again, tentatively, reverently. Halfway through she said, This feels familiar. It should, I said. We used to do this every Sunday night. Before school? She nodded. When I finished, she looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. Her fingers touched the braid, almost surprised by the softness of it. Then she turned and smiled. A real one. Small, but unmistakable. The first in 15 years. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just holding my daughter. I was getting to know her again. Not as the girl who left, but as the woman who found her way back. I spent the entire drive home staring straight ahead. Susan had offered to drop us off, but Emily said she wanted it to be just the 2 of us. So we took my car silent most of the way, letting the tires hum over the asphalt like a song neither of us could remember all the lyrics to. Emily sat in the passenger seat, knees pulled close, arms wrapped around herself like armor. I didn't ask how she felt. I already knew. Coming home wasn't just a return to a house. It was a confrontation with everything she left behind and everything she feared she'd broken by leaving. She asked one question, though, about halfway through the drive. "Did you change my room?" I gripped the wheel tighter. "No," I said. "Not once." She looked out the window again, saying nothing. But I saw her lips twitch just barely, like a string pulled tight about to snap, or play music. When we turned onto our street, she sat up straighter. The neighborhood looked smaller to her now, I'm sure. The houses packed tighter, the trees taller, the driveway more cracked. The world had moved on, but her room had not. I parked in front of the house, turned off the engine, and sat there, keys in my hand, breathing with her. "It's okay to be afraid," I said softly. "I'm not afraid," she said, then paused. "I'm nervous. Same thing sometimes." She opened her door before I did. The front door creaked exactly the same way it always had. I held it open for her, watching as she stepped inside like someone entering a museum of their own life. Her eyes scanned the walls, the same framed photos, the crooked paintings she'd made in 7th grade still above the stairs. She walked into the kitchen, paused, touched the table's edge. "I carved my name under here," she said. I smiled. "I know. I found it once. Couldn't bring myself to sand it out." She crouched, ran her fingers along the underside of the table. "Still there." Then she turned. "Can I see it, your room?" I asked. She nodded. I led her down the hallway. Same carpet. Same scent of old wood and lavender from the sachets I kept tucked into the corners of drawers. The door to her room was closed. She stared at it a moment before turning the knob. And then she stepped inside. Nothing had changed. The posters on the wall were faded but still hanging. The bookshelf was a time capsule of young adult novels, silly teen magazines, an old lava lamp I hadn't dared plug in for years. Her bed still had the purple comforter with stars on it, the one she begged for at age 12. The stuffed bear she once slept with still sat on the pillow. She stood in the middle of the room, turning slowly. "It's smaller," she whispered. "You grew." She walked to the desk, opened the drawer. Inside were pens, erasers, notes she'd scribbled and crumpled. She picked one up and unfolded it. I watched her read. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the bear. I used to pretend he had nightmares so I wouldn't feel stupid for having my own. I sat in the doorway. "You weren't stupid." "I felt like a problem," she said. "All the time. Like I was too much. Too loud. Too emotional." "You were a teenager," I said. "And you were hurting. And you were tired. That hurt." But it was true. "I was tired," I said. "But never tired of you. That's the part I didn't say enough." She looked at me. "Do you think I can stay here?" My breath caught. "Of course, I mean, in this room. As Emily. Not Anna." I nodded. "This room's always been Emily's." Her voice trembled. "I'm afraid I don't remember how to be her." "You don't have to. Just be you. Whatever that means now." She lay back on the bed, staring up at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling. "They're still here." "Yeah. I tried to take them down once. Couldn't do it." "Why not?" "Because the ceiling looked wrong without them. Empty. Like it missed something." She was quiet. "Then so did I." A pause. "Miss something?" I asked. She turned to me. "You." I didn't cry, not there. Not then. I just stood and crossed the room and sat beside her. We didn't touch. We didn't need to. Being beside each other again was enough. And for the first time in 15 years, the house felt full. Not fixed, not healed, but full. That night, I passed her room on the way to bed. The door was open. She was asleep. The bear in her arms. And for the first time since she vanished, I didn't have to dream her back into existence. She was here. And she was mine. I woke up just after sunrise. The house was quiet, the good kind of quiet. Not the hollow silence that used to echo through these walls when I'd walk past her room and listen for the impossible. No, this silence was warm, heavy, alive. I moved softly down the hallway, not wanting to wake her. But as I passed her door, I stopped. It was open, and she wasn't in bed. For a moment, panic gripped me, but then I heard it. The soft clatter of dishes, a faint hum, a tune. I walked toward the kitchen and stood in the doorway. There she was, barefoot, hair pulled into a loose bun, standing in the same kitchen where she once spilled milk and snuck cookies. Now she held a mug in one hand and stirred oatmeal with the other, and she was humming. That same quiet tune she used to sing in the mornings, brushing her teeth back when her biggest worry was whether her socks matched. I couldn't move. I just watched. She sensed me eventually, turned around, our eyes met, and she said it casual, soft, like it had never been gone. Morning, Mom. Not Meredith, not silence, not even hey. Mom. The word shattered me in the gentlest way possible. I swallowed a sob and smiled. Good morning, baby. She handed me a mug. I made coffee. Hope I remembered how. I sat down at the table while she poured her own. She moved slower than most 20-somethings I knew. Not out of laziness, but out of caution. The kind of movement that comes from years of having your autonomy controlled. But every step she took was hers now. We drank in silence for a few minutes, and then she spoke again. I had a dream last night. I looked up. What kind I was in a hallway. Long dark. Doors everywhere. I kept opening them, looking for something. I was getting tired, but I kept going. She stared into her mug, and then I found one with stars painted on it, just like the ones on my old comforter. My breath caught. I opened it, she continued, and there was light. Just warmth. And I heard you humming. That same tune. She looked at me. I think that means I'm finally home. I reached across the table and held her hand. I think so too. Later that morning, we walked through the backyard together. The grass was overgrown. The garden had withered. But the sun was out, and the lilac bush she'd planted as a kid still stood stubborn, blooming against all odds. She knelt and touched one of the blossoms, then turned to me. I want to plant something new. I nodded. Anything you want. She smiled. Maybe something that takes time. Something that grows slowly. That sounds perfect. She paused. I know I'm not the same person, she said, and I don't know if I'll ever be who I was. I squeezed her hand. You don't have to be. I just want to be real again. I nodded. You already are. I've learned something over the past 15 years. Love doesn't vanish. It weathers. It softens in places and hardens in others, but it holds. Even through silence. Even through distance. Even when names change and years pass and voices go quiet. Emily came home in fragments. But she came home. And I've realized it's not my job to put her back together. It's my job to hold space while she rebuilds. One breath at a time. One memory at a time. One morning at a time. So if you're listening and you're a parent who's lost a child emotionally, physically, spiritually, I want to say this: don't give up. Even if the silence lasts for years, even if the world tells you to let go, sometimes the ones we love most don't vanish. They're just trying to remember who they were before they disappeared. And sometimes they remember. And when they do, you need to be there, waiting, soft, steady, like home. Have you ever lost someone to silence? Has someone you love ever come back in an unexpected way? What would you say if your child returned after 15 years? I'd love to hear your story in the comments.